The alarm on my console screamed before I even understood what it meant, and my hands were already shaking when I hit the comm switch to call for the guard nobody respected. My name is Vesa Ion, and I manage docking operations on Rel Station, a small trading post at the edge of nowhere, 3 jumps from anything that matters. 2 minutes ago, a boarding pod had punched through our outer hull like it was made of paper, and every alarm in the station was telling me that armed raiders were now inside my walls. I did not call the elite security team first. I could not. They were 3 sectors away on a supply run, and the only guard on duty tonight was the one everyone on this station quietly laughed about behind his back, the cheap one, the human. His name was Owen Marsh, and the company hired him 8 months ago because humans work for almost nothing compared to any other species in the trade lanes. Earth is new to the wider galaxy, poor by every measure that matters out here, and desperate enough that its people take jobs no one else wants. Owen took the worst shifts, the storage corridors nobody wanted to patrol, the docking bays that smelled like fuel and rust. He never once complained. I remember the first time I saw him, standing at the personnel counter in a uniform 2 sizes too big, looking so unremarkable that I nearly forgot his name 5 seconds after he gave it to me. Humans are small, soft, even, next to the armored hide of a threll or the raw muscle of a Dovan laborer. I looked at him and thought, this one will not last a month. I was wrong about almost everything. But that night, with raiders inside my station and my own heart pounding against my ribs, I did not know that yet. All I knew was that Owen Marsh was the only guard within reach, and he was standing 3 corridors away from the breach, alone. I opened the comm channel with my voice cracking. Owen, do you copy? We have a hull breach at Bay 11. Armed intruders, unknown number, moving toward the cargo hold. There was a pause, just long enough for my stomach to drop, and then his voice came back, flat and calm, like I had asked him about the weather. Copy that. Moving now. That was it. No panic, no questions. I sat there staring at the comm panel, waiting for him to ask for backup, for weapons, for anything, but he said nothing else. On my monitor, I watched his small blue dot begin to move down the corridor map, walking, not running, straight toward the breach. I want to explain something about how the rest of the galaxy sees humans, because it matters for what happened next. When Earth first made contact with the wider trade network, nobody took them seriously. Their ships were slow. Their technology was decades behind everyone else's. Their government sent trade envoys who apologized constantly and asked for loans. Within a few years, human labor became a running joke across a dozen systems, a shorthand for cheap and easy to push around. Hire a human, the saying went, and you save enough credits to buy a drink to celebrate. I had believed that saying my whole career. Standing in my office that night, listening to the silence on the comm line, I began to understand how wrong an entire galaxy could be. The first sign that something was different came 30 seconds later, when one of the raiders' own comm channels crossed briefly with our station frequency, a common glitch with cheap boarding equipment. I heard a voice, rough and full of static, say something that made no sense to me at the time. Wait, Marsh is here. The station has Marsh. Then the channel cut out. I did not know who Marsh was supposed to be, other than the tired-looking guard I had scheduled for the graveyard shift because nobody else wanted it. I assumed it was a coincidence, a common human name, nothing more. I had a great deal to learn that night. On the corridor cameras, I watched Owen reach the junction just outside the cargo hold. He did not draw his weapon yet. He stood at the edge of the doorway for exactly 2 seconds, listening, his head tilted slightly, the way a man listens when he already knows what he is going to hear. Then he moved. I have reviewed that footage more times than I can count since then, and I still find it difficult to describe. He did not charge in. He did not shout a warning. He simply flowed through the doorway low and fast, and within 4 seconds, 3 armed raiders who had been standing near the cargo containers were on the ground, disarmed, and Owen was already moving toward the next room before the first one had finished falling. I sat frozen at my desk, my mouth open, watching a man I had dismissed as barely competent move through my station, like he had walked this exact path 1,000 times before. The raid, I later learned, had been planned by a group calling themselves the Kessa Combine, a small but vicious crew of smugglers who had been hitting poorly defended trading posts along this route for almost a year. They picked Rel Station because our records, sold to them by someone I still have not identified, listed our security as minimal. 1 human guard, low threat. They had no idea what that name actually meant. I called down to the cargo hold on an open channel, my voice unsteady. Owen, status report please. Handled, he said. Moving to secondary breach point now. There is one at Bay 11 and I believe a second team entered through the maintenance shaft near engineering. I would recommend sealing bulkhead 7 so they cannot flank around to the reactor. I stared at the monitor. He was not just fighting. He was thinking 3 steps ahead of raiders who were, by every measure I understood, more numerous and better armed than he was. I sealed Bulkhead 7 with hands that would not stop trembling, and I watched his blue dot move calmly toward engineering. It was in engineering that I finally understood who Owen Marsh really was. The second team, 4 raiders this time, had cornered one of our maintenance workers, a young thrall named Cade who had done nothing wrong except be in the wrong place at the wrong time. I watched on the camera as one of the raiders grabbed Cade by the collar, and I felt sick, certain I was about to watch something terrible happen to a boy who worked for me. Then Owen stepped into the frame. He did not say anything dramatic. He simply said, "Let him go," in the same flat, tired voice he used to ask for extra ration credits in the break room. One of the raiders laughed and raised his weapon toward Owen, and that was when I heard the voice again. The same rough, static-filled voice from before, except now it was close enough for the camera to pick up clearly. "Stop. Stop, all of you. That is Owen Marsh. That is the ninth silence." The other raiders froze. I watched 4 armed men, professional criminals who had clearly done this before, go completely still at the mention of a name I had never heard in my life. The one holding Cade slowly loosened his grip. I did not understand the words then, but I understood the fear in that room perfectly, because fear looks the same on every species when it is real. Owen did not raise his voice. He did not gloat. He simply said, "Let him go, and step back, and this can end without anyone getting seriously hurt. I give you my word on that." They let Cade go. All 4 of them stepped back, weapons lowered, and one of them, the one who had spoken first, actually apologized, saying they did not know the station had hired him, that they would never have come if they had known. I sat in my office and watched a man I had paid the lowest wage on my entire staff bring 4 armed raiders to a complete stop using nothing but his name. After the raiders were secured, restrained with cable ties from the maintenance locker because Owen said he did not believe in unnecessary force, station security finally arrived from their supply run, wide-eyed and confused about why the situation was already resolved. I met Owen in the main corridor outside engineering, and for the first time since I had hired him, I really looked at him. He looked tired. There was a thin cut above his eyebrow that he had not bothered to treat yet, and his uniform, the same one that had looked 2 sizes too big when I first saw him, was smudged with grease from the maintenance shaft. He looked, more than anything else, like a man who wanted to go back to his quarters and sleep. I asked him the only question I could think of. "Who are you?" He gave a small, tired smile, the kind that did not reach his eyes. "Just a guard, ma'am, same as it says on my contract." I told him what I had heard on the comm channel, the name, the way 4 armed criminals had gone silent and stepped back like they were facing something far worse than a single human in an oversized uniform. I asked him again, more carefully this time, what the ninth silence meant. He was quiet for a long moment, long enough that I thought he might simply walk away without answering. Then he told me, in the same calm voice he used for everything, that during Earth's early conflicts, before the wider galaxy paid any attention to what was happening on that small blue planet, he had served in a unit that operated in situations most soldiers were never asked to survive. He said the unit earned its name because they were sent in when negotiations had already failed and every other option had run out, and because when they finished a mission there was nothing left to hear, no gunfire, no shouting, just silence. He told me the unit no longer existed. Most of the people he served with did not either. He said he took this job, the lowest paying security position on a small trading station at the edge of nowhere, because he wanted a place where nobody would ever need him to be that person again. He wanted quiet corridors and boring shifts and a life where the worst thing that happened was a supply ship arriving late. I asked him why he never told anyone. He shrugged and said that people treat you differently once they know, and he had spent long enough being treated differently. He said he liked being underestimated. It was peaceful. I did not know what to say to that, so I simply thanked him and told him his pay would be reviewed immediately. He said that was not necessary. I told him it was not a request. News travels fast on a small station, and faster still across trade networks that thrive on gossip as much as goods. Within a week, the story of the ninth silence and the raid on Rel Station had spread to 3 neighboring systems. I began receiving messages from other station administrators, cautious and a little embarrassed, asking whether I could confirm the guard's identity, and whether similar humans might be available for hire. I want to be honest about something. Before that night, I had never once considered that the cheapest labor available to me might also be the most capable. I had looked at a species new to the galaxy, poor and unpolished and desperate for work, and I had assumed that their low price reflected their low worth. I have thought about that assumption many times since, and I am ashamed of how easily I made it. Owen stayed on at Rel Station for another year after the raid. He never asked for special treatment, never wore his reputation like a badge, and continued to take the shifts nobody else wanted. But something had changed, quietly, across the wider trade routes. Ships that used to skip past our little station without a second glance began stopping more often, their captains mentioning, almost too casually, that they had heard we had good security here. Raiders who had once considered small posts like ours easy targets began giving Rel Station, and eventually several other stations that hired human guards, a wide and respectful distance. I asked Owen once, near the end of his contract, whether he minded that people finally knew who he was. He looked out at the docking bay, at the ships coming and going, and said that he did not mind being known. What he minded was people assuming that quiet meant weak, and that a low price meant low value. He said humans had spent their whole short time in this galaxy being underestimated, and maybe that was not entirely a bad thing, because it meant nobody ever saw them coming. I think about that a great deal now, working in a galaxy that has slowly, carefully, begun to reconsider its assumptions about the small, quiet species from that poor blue planet. I think about the 4 raiders who froze in engineering, about the name that stopped them cold, about the tired smile on a man's face when he told me he just wanted a boring life. Owen Marsh eventually left Rel Station to take a quieter posting somewhere even smaller, somewhere he told me he hoped nobody would ever need to know his name again. I do not know if he found that peace. I hope he did. He earned it more than anyone I have ever met. But I know this much for certain, and I tell it to every new administrator who asks me about hiring humans for their stations now. Do not look at the price on the contract and assume you understand the value of the person signing it. The cheapest guard on my station turned out to be the reason every one of us went home safely that night, and the reason a dozen other stations across this sector now sleep a little easier, without ever knowing exactly why. Somewhere out there, across the trade lanes, there are more like him. Quiet, underpriced, overlooked. And I imagine that somewhere, some other station administrator is about to learn the same lesson I did, in the same sudden and unforgettable way. I only hope, for their sake, that when the alarms start screaming, they have a Marsh of their own standing quietly in the corridor, waiting to be called.